Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor. I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now, this weekend just gone, I had a couple of interesting conversations, and in addition to also seeing certain things in the news and all kinds of other stuff, it got me thinking about the intolerance of criticism that's in the world these days, and how it's a problem on the sides of basically everybody. Um, and so I just kind of wanted to come and talk to you guys about it today, more to kind of outline it and then express my thoughts and feelings on it, rather than anything else. Because obviously, I'm in many ways paid to put up that mirror of constructive criticism and kind of showing people their own flaws and holes, and as a result, I'm used to kind of going through that entire situation of I'm going to present something potentially counter to what my client is saying, and yet they volunteered for it. They know that is going to happen on going into that engagement, on into that interaction, and so as a result, there's not much kickback. It tends to be quite constructive and useful. They go, oh right, yeah, no, I hadn't thought about that. I need to rethink that to make sure that I've covered that in my plan, and all that kind of thing. And it's something the as a result, I can see how criticism, and I've experienced how criticism can be really useful, really helpful. It can be those stepping stones that you need to get to where you want to go. But then I look at the rest of the world, and I see the individuals who, for instance, some of the articles that we were looking at last week have been kind of criticised for what they were saying, and we've got a couple of different examples. We've got the endometriosis article that we took a look at last Friday, where the person who was being criticised, the researcher, didn't straight up criticise back. She just pointed out the solid elements of why she was asking that question, why she was doing it, how it all made sense, and just progressed with it. There was no malice or anything like that. It was just, you know what, I kind of saw this coming. I kind of hoped it wouldn't, but I kind of saw it coming, and so as a result, here's why I'm doing it, and here's why I'm just going to keep going with it. But then we also had others who were kind of less open to it, and it was much more about blaming someone else. And then in these discussions that I had at the weekend about this, there was a lot more. We were talking about the actress that played Rose Tico in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and how she was getting so much flack that she was, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Twitter or Instagram, that she dropped off of. But in talking about that, it was like, we have our thoughts, our opinions. They may be very well informed or not particularly well informed at all, but when it comes to expressing them, we need to express them in a way that makes sense, is reasonable, and so on and so forth, whilst then I look at the situation that's transpired and I can see the root of it. And the root was, in regards to the Star Wars: The Last Jedi and so on situation, you had the authority over it all, the studio, the director, being very dismissive of everything, the stars going, oh, well, if you don't like what's happened, then you're just a misogynist and you're basically a terrible person. And as a result, you had a lot of fans who also had legitimate criticism being shut down, and as a result, they felt powerless. And when you make someone feel powerless, you only need to look at the rebellions through history. You get enough people feeling powerless and disenfranchised together, and something bad happens for everybody. You have loss of life on all sides, and terrible stuff happens. So when it comes to these situations, yeah, it's not as severe as a proper full-blown kind of French Revolution-esque situation, but you do have a situation where people end up getting hurt. And it's because they pick those sides and they don't just stick to that solid middle ground of going, well, okay, you can criticize what you like, but this is what I'm doing. You know, the number of people that I'm sure watch some of the videos that I do that are maybe more commentary based and dislike what I say, and it becomes a case of, well, I can back up pretty much everything that I say because otherwise I wouldn't say it. Sometimes I don't say it in the most effective way because I'm human and sometimes I slip up. Sometimes the words in my head don't add up in the right way and they come out my mouth in a way that doesn't get my point across entirely because this is a video and it's not a psychic transmission. But, you know, when it comes to these situations, it's just kind of miserable to watch. You know, whether it's over something like pop culture, whether it's something like identity politics, like those things last week, whether it's something serious like the research that we were discussing last week in regards to endometriosis, whether it's the stuff around game addiction that we've discussed this week, it all kind of adds up and kind of overflows in the end in the form of something negative. People lashing out at each other, people sending hate and death threats to one another, more divisions being made for no reason, people not being willing to listen to fact and reason that can be quite happily backed up, or people grasping at straws and making kind of very broad statements over not very much. And it's a case of going, well, how have we got to this point? Like, I remember when I was in school, which granted was, 15 years ago or so, slightly less. But it's a case of me at the time thinking, do you know what, we've come so far. I've got friends from all over the world. I'm able to communicate with them every day. I've got so much more content, stories from the real world, from fantasy and fiction, to just consume. Things that I loved from the past are being brought back with varying degrees of success, so I can either be really excited or there's something to discuss for maybe the next time. And there are all these other things that kind of cascade and roll forward and that are really interesting to look at. And, you know, I wanted to go and do lab work. I wanted to go and do philosophy and debate and discussion. I wanted to go out into the world and help people because I was just good at finding solutions, good at analysing the things that are in front of me, breaking stuff down. And yet then we get to the modern day and I'm like, I can break stuff down, I can talk things through, I can provide that extra insight. I'm trying to help people, but in many instances they don't necessarily want to be helped. The quagmire that is modern education and modern advancement just doesn't do anyone as any favours anymore, because it tends to just leave the people that go through it with a huge disadvantage, many even before they've started doing anything with their lives. They've literally just left school. And so when it comes to this intolerance of criticism, it always comes from the point of authority first, the point of origin for whatever the discussion is on. And yet then you can either have people going kind of one of three ways. They either come in and they go, look, this is the facts, and then people will continue to disagree with them, continue to try and nitpick even when they don't really have that much ground to do it on. They will come in and they will just dismiss everything, dismiss all criticism, which then means the you know, people are feeling helpless and they eventually kind of bottle up enough rage to explode and cause problems. Or you've got the third path where apologies are made, people backpedal, people try and hide things, and it all seems very disingenuous in a lot of situations, which can frustrate people even more, or the integrity of whatever it is that was going on in the first place diminishes. Imagine if the study that we were talking about into endometriosis and its effect on male partners last week, imagine if that study because of the backlash, never actually got followed up on, never got finished. In which case there's a huge amount of information there that wouldn't be found. There's a huge amount of resources that couldn't be made available to those men to support their partners more readily, meaning that those women's existences would potentially become harder, or at the very least not become easier. And so, you know, these three different paths, there's only one of them that comes out with any kind of reasonable solution. Even then, that person is still very much open to attack, but it's a form of attack that doesn't necessarily always boil over, and that is the sticking to facts, sticking to what you can prove, what you can show. Because at least then, if it does boil into something, if you do have a group of people that decide to lash out, then you are better protected by the powers that be, because you have been transparent, you've been upfront, you've been very to the point. Whilst then, in regards to some of those other situations where things will boil over, or where things will either because things are being dismissed, or because people, the point of origin for whatever's being discussed has kind of kowtowed to the pressure. In either of those two situations, you either have the people who are in the situation where people are feeling disenfranchised because all of their concerns are being dismissed. Then it's the case of people, those people who are being dismissed, feeling upset and boiling over. In the other situation, it's the people who already liked what was going on feeling pushed aside. And there is always a middle ground to be found somewhere. It just takes time, but you can't do that by acquiescing to one side or another. You have to stick to whatever is just solid and factual and useful. And this is where I had a really great conversation actually with one of my friends over the weekend in regards to the new Star Trek, the new Star Wars, a whole load of other movies and franchises that are being used and messed around with and moved around, how things are being developed with them. And, you know, we had differing opinions on points, but the points that we touched in on were basically, yeah, this is all just solid criticism. You know, I've got my critiques, he had his critiques. They may not have been the same critiques, but we could agree that it wasn't perfect and that there were areas for improvement that could have potentially made both of us happy. You know, and that kind of stands out when you have those kind of conversations. You have this list of things that you can actually just do to improve things with, instead of the outrage and the negativity and the backlash that we see so much these days over things that really are non-issues. And so when it comes to you personally, and in regards to criticism, I've done videos on kind of the best way to criticize, and maybe I should redo some of those in light of more recent examples I could use. But, you know, it just comes down to trying to stick to what's factual, not what you feel, but what you can prove. Yeah? Because at least that way then it's transparent, it's straightforward. No one's trying to win over anyone else, no one's trying to fight with anyone else. It's just what's there that you can work with. And that might be difficult, it might be very hard to do, but that is the best possible course. And it's something that I wish we saw more of, because good god damn do we need less hate, less fighting, less madness going on in the world at the moment, especially around topics like the ones we covered last week. Research and the differences between men and women. These are things that we should be acknowledging, we should be celebrating, we should be educating on, we should be working with. These aren't things that we should be shaming, that we should be knocking down, that we should be arguing about the minutiae of. We should just be accepting it and seeing how we can work forward from it. That's something that we've already done several times in the last 100 or so years. Let's keep doing that instead of just stopping to throw bricks at each other, especially over issues that have been settled for the longest time already. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts. This was more of just a rambly video, but, you know, hey ho, it was something that I had on my mind that I kind of wanted to bring to you guys just to throw some ideas around on. So, you know, if you've got thoughts on this, then I'd love to hear them. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.